Most people remember being dropped off somewhere safe: school, soccer practice, a friend's house with the porch light already on. I remember being dropped off at Blackwater Station on the last cold Friday of November 2004, with a blue canvas backpack that had nothing in it and a pair of white sneakers that belonged to my brother. Mason was 12, sitting in the front seat, grinning like the whole thing was a game, betting $5 on whether I'd cry before the truck pulled away. I was 8 years old. My mother told me to wait. She said she'd be right back. She never came back. That night, I did not find my way home. I found the woman who taught me what home was supposed to feel like. My name is Elara Wren. I'm 30 now, and I run community programs at Ashford Public Library. Then, one morning, my phone lit up with 18 missed calls, 6 voicemails, and 1 text from the brother who watched me get left behind. "Mom's in hospice. If you ignore this, the church will hear about it." By then, I already knew what place I had in the family. Mason was the one who got explained. I was the one who got corrected. When he knocked a framed photo off the mantel one winter, my mother made me apologize because I should have known better than to get under his skin. When I broke out in hives after eating a granola bar with peanut butter in it, she stared at the wrapper like my allergy had personally embarrassed her. She never once bought the wrong cereal for Mason, and every winter he got something new while I got whatever still fit after he outgrew it. So when she pulled the car into the gravel lot at Blackwater Station and killed the engine, nothing in me thought this was normal, but nothing in me thought I was allowed to say that either. Mason was 12 then, all elbows and smugness, sitting in the front passenger seat with one knee up against the dashboard like he owned the truck. My stepfather, Richard Shaw, was driving because he always drove when my mother wanted to act like she wasn't really part of what was happening. He kept both hands on the wheel and looked straight ahead, like if he didn't turn his head, none of it would belong to him. My mother twisted around to face me. Her face was tired, not angry. Tired was worse. Anger at least meant you still counted enough to be a problem. "Get out for a minute, Elara." I looked at her, then at the window, then back at her. "Am I waiting here?" "Just for a few minutes. Be a big girl." Mason laughed under his breath. "Bet $5 she cries before we hit the road." My mother didn't tell him to stop. Richard muttered, "Make it quick." That was the last thing I heard before I stepped out into the cold. The station sat at the edge of Franklin County like something the rest of the world had forgotten. One long platform, a dim waiting area, metal benches that held the cold like a grudge. The gravel in the lot crunched under the tires when Richard backed up. I stood there with my empty backpack on my shoulders and watched the truck disappear past the yellow station lights. I did not run after it. I did not scream. That would have meant believing there was still something to call back. I sat on the bench and wrapped my fingers around the straps of the backpack. One freight train came through without slowing, then another. Then one of the late southbound trains with lit windows and faces inside, all of them looking forward, nobody looking out. The station lights buzzed. Wind cut down the platform and under the cuffs of my jacket. The heels of Mason's shoes kept slipping when I moved my feet, so I stopped moving them. I measured time by the trains because that was easier than measuring it by fear. I don't know how long I sat there before Ruth Ann Pike noticed me. Long enough for my hands to go numb. Long enough for me to stop scanning the parking lot every time headlights passed the road beyond the trees. She was waiting for the late train to Charlotte, though I didn't know that then. I only saw a woman in a wool coat with a paperback folded face down in her lap and reading glasses pushed up onto her hair. She didn't rush over. She came close slowly, like she understood that children who have been frightened by adults don't always trust kindness when it arrives too fast. She sat on the far end of the bench and looked straight ahead. "Have you eaten anything tonight?" I shook my head. "What about today?" I thought about it. "A half sandwich after school," I said. She nodded once. got up and walked to the vending machines by the waiting room. When she came back, she handed me a cold apple juice box. The paper straw was bent. I spent a long time trying to smooth it straight with my thumb and forefinger. She let me. She did not tell me to hurry. She did not say it was only a straw. She sat beside me in the dark and made room for how long it took. After that, she asked my name, and then she went to the station desk and asked the clerk to call the sheriff's office and county child services. Deputy Howard Ellis arrived first, broad-shouldered and careful-voiced, his hat tucked under one arm so he wouldn't seem too official. Linda Carver from Franklin County CPS came not long after, carrying a legal pad and a coat that still smelled like the heater from her car. They asked me my name, age, address, my mother's name, my brother's name, what kind of vehicle they drove. I answered all of it. At the end, I asked the only question that mattered. Is my mom coming back? Linda looked at Howard. Howard looked at the tracks. We're going to make sure you're safe tonight, Hummy. That was not an answer, and even at 8, I knew the difference. They reached my mother before midnight. I heard part of it from the office, not because anyone meant me to, but because county buildings at night carry voices through walls. My mother said there had been a family argument. She said I got upset and wanted out of the truck. She said she thought I had gone inside where station calf could see me. Richard backed her up with the kind of calm voice men use when they want a lie to sound like common sense. What I never heard in either of their voices was panic. No, where is she? No, we're on our way. No, please keep her there. Just excuses. Slow, tidy, practiced excuses. I went into foster care that weekend with my backpack still empty and Mason's shoes still on my feet. 11 months later, after phone calls my mother didn't return and paperwork she never hurried, Ruthann Pike signed the papers that said she wanted me. In September of 2026, I was 30 years old and standing in her kitchen on Willow Creek Road, opening an old file box she had labeled in her neat schoolteacher handwriting. 2 weeks from then, Ashford Public Library would open the Ruthann Pike Children's Reading Room. I was supposed to be writing a warm speech about literacy and safety and the woman who changed my life. Instead, I found letter after letter she had sent to my mother over the years, school photos, progress reports, invitations to visit me in a safe, neutral place, every one unanswered. One envelope had been returned unopened. Across the front, in dark blue ink I recognized instantly, my mother had written, "Do not send anything else. She has moved on. So have we." My phone lit up in my hand hard enough to make me flinch. 18 missed calls, 6 voicemails, 1 text from Mason. "Mom's in hospice. If you ignore this, the church will hear about it." I stared at the screen until it dimmed in my hand, then lit again when another voicemail came through. I did not call back that night. I did not call back first thing in the morning either. I set my phone on Ruthann's kitchen table, made coffee I did not want, and listened to every message in order while the house stayed quiet around me. The first one was Mason doing his soft voice, the voice he used when he wanted credit for not yelling. "Elara, it's Mason. Mom doesn't have much time. She just wants to hear your voice once, that's all. Call me back." The second was Nora. I had only met her a handful of times over the years, always at funerals or in grocery store aisles where she looked like she was trying not to take up space. "Hi, Elara. I know this is awkward. I'm sorry to call. I just think there are things people should say while they still can." The third was Mason again, and the softness had already worn off. "You always make everything harder than it needs to be." The fourth dragged church into it. People at Covenant Hill are already praying for Mom. The fifth tightened the screws. "Folks are going to ask why you wouldn't come." The sixth gave him away. We need to handle the Briar Glen house paperwork before this turns ugly. I replayed that one twice, then reached for Donna Klein before I could talk myself into doing something emotional and stupid. Donna answered on the second ring, with a voice that always sounded like paper laid flat on a desk. Tell me everything. I gave her the calls, the text, the line about hospice, the line about church, and finally the line about the house. She didn't waste a single word. If they only wanted you to hear a dying woman's last wishes, they would not be threatening your reputation before breakfast. I stood at the sink and watched the first thin steam rise from my coffee. That was my guess too. Second, if Mason mentioned paperwork, then there is money or property tied up in this. Third, do not react out of guilt. Guilt is the favorite weapon of families who know exactly how to use women. I closed my eyes. What do you want me to do? Nothing yet. I'll pull title records on the Briar Glen property. Give me until tomorrow morning. By 9, I was at Ashford Public Library, trying to act like my life was not trying to claw its way through the walls. The children's room wasn't open yet, but everything for the dedication was in motion. Sample invitations on my desk, ribbon order confirmed, donor list half updated, a floor plan for the Ruth Ann Pike Children's Reading Room taped to the side of my filing cabinet. Ruth Ann's name looked steady in block letters. I did not. Marilyn Sutton asked me into her office before I had taken off my coat. She was 67, silver-haired, straight-backed, and the kind of woman who could make a room settle just by adjusting her glasses. Close the door, Elara. I did. She folded her hands on the desk. I've had 2 phone calls since 8 this morning, both vague, both unusually interested in your family life. Is there something I need to know before next week gets away from us? I could have lied. I thought about it for half a second. My mother is in hospice. My brother is suddenly very interested in speaking to me. I don't think it's really about reconciliation. Marilyn studied my face. Could this spill into the event? I looked at the framed poster proof on the wall. Ruth Ann Pike Children's Reading Room, grand opening, Saturday at 2. I don't know yet. That was enough honesty for her. If anyone tries to turn a children's library dedication into a family spectacle, I will not allow it, but I need warning if there's a real risk. You'll have it. When I stepped back into the hallway, Rosa Heller was crouched beside a cart of picture books, sorting them by age range. She looked up at me and saw something in my face immediately. You look like you slept in a courtroom. Close, I said. She stood and lowered her voice. One of the moms this morning asked if you should maybe step back from the event if you're under personal stress. I laughed once, without humor. That didn't take long. No, it didn't. At noon, Celia Thorne knocked on my office door, holding her tablet against her chest. I need to tell you something before it gets worse. What is it? One of the smaller donors is pausing their confirmation. They said they don't want their name showing up anywhere near a family scandal. The room went still around me, not because I was surprised, but because there it was, the point of attack. Not just me, not just my private life, Ruth Ann's room, the thing I had built in her name. Celia grimaced. I'm sorry. It's not your fault. By late afternoon, Pastor Caleb Doon called. I almost let it go to voicemail, but some part of me wanted to hear how far my mother's story had traveled without me. Elara, this is Caleb Doon from Covenant Hill Fellowship. I know who you are. His silence was brief, then careful. Your mother has spoken of you for many years. She has lived with a great deal of grief. My hand tightened around the phone. Has she? Families go through difficult seasons. People lose each other. Sometimes pride stretches things out longer than it should. This may be your last chance to make peace. I stood in the staff room staring at the vending machine and the reflection of my own face in the glass. When a mother says she lost a child, Pastor, did anyone ever ask how old the child was? Nothing on the line for a second but the hum of fluorescent lights over my head. I'm not sure I understand. I think you do. He exhaled softly, like he had just stepped onto ground he had not realized was unstable. I only want to help. Then maybe start by asking a better question. That evening, Nora texted instead of calling. I'm sorry if church made this worse. Mason is under a lot of pressure. The house is a mess. I read that line 3 times. The house. I still did not answer. Instead, I went back to the file box in Ruth Ann's kitchen and kept reading. A letter from 2008 saying I had made the elementary school reading team at Mayberry Elementary. A letter from 2011 with a 5th grade class photo enclosed. A letter from 2015 where Ruth Ann wrote that I had once asked whether silence from adults meant I had done something wrong, and that she had told me, no, silence usually meant adults were protecting themselves. By the time I went to bed, the house felt full of her. Not in a ghost story way, in a truer way, in the shape of what she had bothered to keep. Donna called the next morning before 8. I have what I need, she said. I sat down at the kitchen table. Tell me. The Briar Glen property has been refinanced twice in the last 8 years. The last refinance was in 2023 under bad terms. Mason is primary on the note. Richard is on it too, but title is not clean. In what way? Back in 2009, after the financial mess they got into, your mother and Richard restructured family property interests, sloppily. There is a surviving partial interest tied to your name from that paperwork. You were 13. It should have been cleaned up years ago. It never was. So he needs my signature? Yes, but if this were only about your signature, they would have sent paperwork to me. They want something bigger than documents. I looked down at the old class photo on the table, the one my mother had never opened. What? Donna's voice sharpened. In a town like Ashford, paperwork settles the legal side. Public appearances settle the moral side. If your mother can get you next to her, at hospice or church or anywhere people can see it, then the story she has been telling becomes believable enough that no one asks harder questions. No one asks why the title issue suddenly matters. No one asks what actually happened 22 years ago. I said nothing. Donna let the silence sit for a beat, then finished the thought for me. They do not just want your signature, Elara. They want your face. I set my phone down beside the title summary she had emailed over and looked at the unopened 5th grade picture Ruth Ann had once tried to mail to my mother. The coldest part was not that they had come back needing something from me. It was that they had come back needing me to help them lie. That was somehow worse than if they had come back hating me. Donna Klein called again just after lunch, this time with the part that had been bothering her since morning. I talked to someone who used to handle volunteer bookkeeping at Covenant Hill, she said. Your mother is not just a woman who attends church. She is woven into the place. I closed my office door and sat down. How woven? Women's circle, prayer groups, fundraiser nights. She has told some version of her story for years. Not the facts, of course, the polished version, the one where you were lost after a difficult period and she never stopped praying. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the bulletin board over my desk. Color-coded sticky notes, donor deadlines, seating mock-ups for the dedication. Ruth Ann's room had taken 6 months of my life to bring into focus, and my mother was somehow reaching through time to smudge it with one hand. Donna kept going. Nobody heard her say she abandoned a child at a train station. They heard that she lives with a private grief and has always hoped for reconciliation. That is a very different story in a church. When I hung up, I sat there for a minute without moving. The thing about a lie told long enough is that it stops sounding like a lie to the people who benefit from believing it. It starts sounding like character. By mid-afternoon, the whispering had turned into suggestions, not cruel ones. That almost made them worse. A mother of one of our early literacy kids stopped me outside the children's area with a hand on my forearm and that careful face people use when they want to feel kind. Maybe it would be better to postpone next week just so the room doesn't become about something else. I smiled because women are trained to smile even when they are being displaced from their own work. Thank you for your concern. The dedication is still on. She nodded like she had done her duty and walked off. An hour later, Marilyn Sutton called me into her office again. She shut the door this time and did not sit down. If anyone tries to turn Ruth Ann's room into a church event or a family scene, I will shut it down, but I need to know if that risk is real. I looked at her, really looked. There was no gossip in her face, no hunger, just a woman old enough to know trouble before it put on a name tag. Yes, I said, I think it's real. Do you need security? Not yet. Then tell me the second that changes. She softened only a fraction. Ruth Ann would not have wanted that room handed over to anyone's performance. No, she wouldn't. Celia Thorne caught me on my way out with her phone in one hand. Southside Family Dental is hesitating. They don't want their name tied to a family disgrace. There it was again. Not tragedy, not pain, disgrace. Small towns love that word because it makes cruelty sound civic-minded. By Thursday, Mason stopped calling and showed up in person. I saw his truck through the side window first, idling crooked in the back lot like the paint lines didn't apply to him. Some habits survive everything. He came inside in a button-down shirt that had been ironed hours ago and already given up. He looked tired, but not in a way that earned sympathy, more like a man outrunning bills. Rosa spotted him before he reached my office. That family? Yeah. Do you want me to stay? No, but thank you. I walked him out the side door before he could drag his voice through the main floor. The back lot smelled like hot asphalt and pine needles. He shoved his hands into his pockets and rocked once on his heels, like he was trying out a posture. Mom's dying, Elara. I waited. That's really all you have? I kept waiting. His jaw tightened. I'm the one who stayed. I'm the one who handled everything. The house, her appointments, Richard, all of it. You disappeared into this nice little life, and now you act like you're above the wreckage. I looked at him for a second long. You mean the life I built after you left me at Blackwater Station in your old shoes with an empty backpack? He rolled his eyes. We were kids. You were 12, and you've made a whole life out of that night. The words landed exactly where he meant them to, then missed because I was no longer 8. No, I said. I made a life after that night. There's a difference. For a second, he had nothing. Then he reached for the only thing he had ever really had, the assumption that if he pushed hard enough, I would fold first. You could stop all this by standing next to her for 10 minutes. I almost laughed, not because it was funny, because he finally said the quiet part out loud. You don't want me back, I said. You want a witness. His face changed, just for a second, not enough to admit guilt, enough to show I was right. You always think the worst of people. I think exactly what you keep proving. He stared at me like he wanted me smaller, easier. Then he got back in his truck and left without saying goodbye. Donnelly Cross led the women's prayer trickle at Covenant Hill, which meant she had helped carry my mother's version of the story farther than most. That night, Nora texted after 9. I'm sorry about today. He shouldn't have gone there. I waited, then typed back. Did he tell you to write that? No. Pause. But I should have written sooner. I sat on Ruth Ann's couch with my feet tucked under me and the old file box open on the coffee table. Then tell me something true. The typing bubble appeared, vanished, appeared again. I heard your mom tell Donnelly Cross that if you show up in front of people, they'll stop asking the wrong questions. I read the message twice. What questions? About the house, about why everything suddenly has to be done now, about what really happened between you all. Another bubble. Mason has a folder in his truck. He won't leave it in the house. I set the phone down and went back to the returned envelope from my mother. For some reason, I had never opened it all the way. I had only looked at the writing on the front and stopped there, as if that was already enough pain for one person to hold. This time, I slid the school picture out. 5th grade. My hair crooked where I had tried to trim my own bangs. A blue sweater Ruth Ann had bought me because she said the color made my eyes look less cautious. The edges of the photo had bowed inward from years pressed inside the envelope. My mother had never even seen that face. A person can reject a child in one terrible act, or they can reject her quietly, over and over, by refusing every chance to know who she became. I called Linda Carver the next morning. She had been out of Franklin County CPS for years, but I found her through an old holiday card Ruth Ann kept in a kitchen drawer. Her voice sounded older, slower, but still sturdy. Elara, my goodness. I had a question about that year. There was a pause that told me she already knew which year. I can't release records, honey. I'm not asking you to. I just need to know if I'm remembering something wrong. Did they ever really try to get me back? They responded enough not to look like monsters on paper. They did not respond like people desperate to bring their child home. Thank you. Ruth Ann loved you very much. She knew exactly what you needed. After I hung up, I sat with that for a while. By evening, Nora sent one more message. No introduction, no apology, just a photo. It was taken fast and badly, the kind of picture someone snaps while pretending to check the time. A kitchen table, a stack of title paperwork, a yellow sticky note in my mother's handwriting. If she stands beside me, nobody questions anything. I held the phone in one hand and the returned envelope in the other. That was the moment whatever doubt I had left finally died. My mother was not trying to find me before she ran out of time. She was trying to make sure the story she told about herself outlived her. By Friday morning, the problem was no longer whether I believed my mother meant it. The problem was what counted as kindness now. Ruth Ann had taught first graders for 30 years, and me for 22 more, and she never confused softness with goodness. She liked order, clear words, no performances. The idea of turning the Ruth Ann Pike Children's Reading Room into the place where I finally said out loud what my mother had done felt wrong in a way I couldn't dismiss. But letting Colleen use Ruth Ann's room to finish a lie felt worse. Donna Klein came by the library just before lunch, carrying a legal pad and a manila folder that looked overstuffed enough to bite back. She did not come in through the front. She used the side entrance near my office, the way people do in small towns when they know the difference between discretion and secrecy. I shut the door behind her. Tell me the worst part first. She set the folder down and pulled out 3 pages. Mason is behind on 2 payments tied to the Briar Glen refinance. Not rumored, confirmed. He is running out of room before the 4th quarter ends. So he needs my signature fast. Yes, but listen carefully, because this part matters more. Your appearance with your mother would not solve anything legally, not one thing. It would solve the social side. I sat down. Meaning if the town sees you standing beside her, if church people see her cry and you do not walk away, if anyone gets a photo that looks like reconciliation, then every question after that gets harder for you and easier for them. She slid one of the pages toward me. "This is what they need, not law. Cover." I read nothing. I just watched her fingertip tap the title summary. "If you challenge the paperwork later, you become the daughter who embraced her dying mother in public and then turned around and made things difficult. If you hesitate, if you ask questions, if you insist on your attorney, suddenly you are the cruel one. They want to settle morality first so they can pressure the rest." I looked up. "So she wants my conscience pinned down before anything else." "Exactly." Donna leaned back. "Your mother knows how this town works. People forgive paperwork they don't understand. They do not forgive a woman who looks cold beside a dying mother." That landed because it was true. When Donna left, I went straight into the new reading room. The paint smell had faded. The low shelves were filled. Beanbags in soft blue and mustard sat in a half circle near the rug. Ruth Ann's framed photo leaned against the far wall, waiting to be hung after the dedication. Her face in that picture was exactly how I remembered her: calm, amused, not impressed by nonsense. My phone buzzed while I was standing there. It was Nora. "Can I?" I answered instead of texting back. "You can talk." Her voice was low and rushed, like she was in a bathroom with the fan on. "I heard Colleen talking to Donna Lee Cross this morning." I waited. "She said she doesn't want to die in the wrong role." The sentence hit me so hard, it almost felt clean. What does that mean? "It means she wants people to remember her as the mother who kept waiting and finally got her daughter back." I sat on the arm of one of the beanbags because my knees had started to feel unreliable. Nora kept going. "Donna Lee and some of the women from church are planning to bring flowers tomorrow. They want a moment to pray over your mother and the miracle of reconciliation." I laughed once and hated the sound of it. "In the children's room. I'm sorry." "Sorry doesn't stop them." "I know." There was a small silence, then she said the truest thing she had said to me yet. "I don't think she's afraid of dying, Elara. I think she's afraid of dying badly remembered." That was the first honest sentence anyone from that house had ever given me for free. After I hung up, I walked straight to Marilyn Sutton's office. She was reading a grant packet with a yellow marker in her hand and took one look at my face before setting it down. "What happened?" "Church women are coming tomorrow, with flowers. They want a public prayer over my mother. They are calling it reconciliation." Her expression did not change much, but the room seemed to get colder anyway. "Over my dead body." Celia knocked before I could answer and stepped in with her tablet. "I need to tell both of you now. Parker Dental has officially withdrawn." "Because of me?" "Because they cannot be part of a controversy involving children's programming." Marilyn took off her glasses and pressed the bridge of her nose. "The library does not owe anyone our building for their private morality play, but if this blows up in front of a room full of children, the board will be left holding it. You understand that, yes?" I did, and that was exactly why I couldn't walk into the next day carrying anger and nothing else. That evening, my mother called me herself. I almost let it ring out. I should have. Instead, I stood in Ruth Ann's kitchen with one hand on the counter and answered. "Hello?" For a second, there was only breathing. Then her voice, thinned by illness but still unmistakably hers. "Elara." I said nothing. "I know I wasn't perfect." "No," I said. "You weren't." A dry little pause. "I don't have the strength for a fight." "Then don't call me for one." I could hear a machine somewhere near her, maybe oxygen, maybe just the slow mechanical noise of a room built around endings. "I just don't want these last days to be harder than they need to be." There it was. Not, "I'm sorry," not, "I was wrong," just a request for comfort, still centered on her. I looked down at the stack of letters on the kitchen table. "Ruth Ann wrote to you for years." Another silence. Longer this time. She should have known better than to keep stirring things up. That did it. Not because it surprised me, because it didn't. You mean she should have known better than to keep telling you I was still alive? I didn't say that. You didn't have to. Her breathing hitched once, irritated now. People are trying to help. No, I said. People are trying to help you stay innocent. I ended the call before she could answer. Late that night, after the house had gone completely still, I carried everything into the new reading room. The letters Ruth Ann had sent, the returned envelope in my mother's hand, the county intake summary Donna had pulled together, the photo Nora had sent of the sticky note on the kitchen table. I laid them out carefully across one of the low, round tables meant for puzzles and crayons. I was not going to dump 22 years of pain on strangers because it felt good to finally bleed in public. I was not going to stand in front of children and turn my life into a spectacle. I was going to bring only what the truth needed in order to stand up on its own. Just before midnight, Nora texted, "They're bringing the iPad. Colleen wants to speak to the room herself." I read it once, then again. Then I went to Ruth Ann's closet and took out the navy blazer she used to wear to school board meetings and library fundraisers and every event where she needed to look like a woman nobody should underestimate. I slid the returned envelope into the inside pocket over my heart and stood in front of the mirror in her bedroom. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I just knew that by this time tomorrow, I was either going to let them use me one last time, or I was going to make sure they never could again. Saturday came bright and cold. The kind of October afternoon North Carolina does so well that people start forgiving the summer for what it put them through. By 1:30, Ashford Public Library was full enough to feel alive and small enough for every silence to matter. Children sat cross-legged on the new rug in the reading room doorway. Parents lined the walls with coffee cups and church clothes and the careful faces people wear when they are trying to be both interested and decent. Marilyn Sutton stood near the back with her hands folded. Celia Thorne was at the refreshment table, pretending not to count who had shown up and who had not. A couple of Ruth Ann's former students had come, grown now, with their own children clutching picture books against their chests. On the small round table by the window sat a single apple juice box with the straw already straightened. I had put it there before anyone arrived. I wore Ruth Ann's navy blazer and held the speech I had written the way people hold a receipt they already know they are going to use. Everything in me felt still. Not calm exactly, past the point where panic can help. When I stepped to the front, the room settled. "Thank you all for coming," I said. "We built this room because Ruth Ann Pike believed children need a place where they can think before anyone tells them what to think. She believed some kids speak when they feel safe, and some kids only feel safe after someone lets them be quiet first." A few people smiled. One older teacher in the second row dabbed at her eye before anything hard had even started. I talked about Ruth Ann the way she would have wanted, her classroom habits, the way she remembered which child hated being read to in a baby voice, the way she never confused a loud child with a confident one, or a silent child with an easy one. I talked about how she believed a room could teach a child something before a lesson ever did, that shelves placed low enough to reach and chairs soft enough to trust were not little things, they were invitations. The room warmed exactly the way I had hoped it would. And then Mason stepped forward. Not much, half a step, enough. Nora stood behind him with a bouquet of white grocery store flowers she looked like she wished were bricks. Donnelly Cross and two women from Covenant Hill were near the side wall, already arranged into sympathy. On a chair near the doorway, an iPad lit up, and my mother's face appeared from a bed at St. Agnes Hospice Center. pale and sharpened by illness, but still unmistakably practiced. Pastor Caleb Doon stood 2 people behind the screen, his expression hopeful in the dangerous way of men who think they are about to witness grace. Mason cleared his throat. Before we cut the ribbon, Mom wanted to say something to her daughter in front of everyone who's been praying. That was how he did it, not like an ambush, like a favor. I set the ceremonial scissors down on the table beside the ribbon and looked at him for 1 full second before I turned back to the room. If you want to understand why this room exists, I said, you need to know where Ruth Ann Pike found me. Everything stilled, even the children. I did not raise my voice. I did not look at the iPad. In November of 2004, I was 8 years old and sitting alone at Blackwater Station in shoes that did not fit and with a backpack that had nothing in it. My mother told me to wait. My brother joked about betting $5 on whether I'd cry. Then they drove away. Ruth Ann Pike was there that night. She sat beside me, bought me an apple juice, and asked me one question that changed the rest of my life. She asked if I had eaten. No one moved. The children were too young to understand all of it, but even they understood the shape of a room when adults stopped pretending. I reached into the inside pocket of Ruth Ann's blazer and took out the returned envelope. Ruth Ann never kept me from my mother. She wrote to her for years. She sent school pictures, updates, invitations to meet me in a safe place. This came back unopened. I handed the envelope to Marilyn because I trusted her to read without dramatics. She looked at the front, her jaw tightening as her eyes moved over the handwriting. Do not send anything else. She has moved on. So have we. The words landed flat and hard, which was exactly what they needed to do. Then Donna Klein stepped up. She did not perform. She did not pace. She simply held a single sheet of paper and spoke like a woman who respected facts too much to decorate them. Franklin County records still contain the intake summary from the night Elara Wen was found at Blackwater Station. The summary reflects that she was located alone, that county services were contacted, and that her family did not respond with the urgency one would expect from people desperately trying to bring a child home. She lowered the paper. That is all I intend to say on the legal side today. Mason moved then, fast enough to scrape a chair. Are you serious right now? This is what you're doing while Mom is dying? I turned to him for the first time since he had spoken. You brought her into this room. He opened his mouth again, but there was nothing to say that could fix what had already been made visible. On the iPad, my mother was crying, or maybe she was only breathing hard. Illness makes everything look sincere from the wrong angle. Her voice crackled through the speaker. I just wanted my daughter back. That was when Nora walked over, put her hand on the top edge of the tablet, and lowered the screen until my mother's face disappeared. No one stopped her. Pastor Caleb looked like someone had moved the floor under him by 6 inches and expected him not to notice. Donna Lee Cross stared straight ahead at nothing. The women beside her held their flowers too tightly. Marilyn stepped up beside me. This room remains about Ruth Ann Pike and the children she believed in. Her voice did what mine no longer needed to. It set the perimeter. I looked out at the people in front of me and felt the strangest thing, not triumph, not relief, just a tired kind of clarity. I'm not standing here to humiliate a dying woman, I said. I'm standing here because I will not let my silence keep being used for proof of something that was never true. Ruth Ann Pike did not give birth to me, but she gave me a home, a life, and a room where no child has to sit alone too long before someone notices. I looked down at the juice box by the window, then back up. That matters more than pretending. I picked the scissors back up and cut the ribbon. The applause came late and uneven. Some people clapped because they were moved. some because they were ashamed, some not at all. It sounded real, which was better than loud. A couple of people near the back avoided looking at me altogether. Donna Lee Cross held her flowers like she no longer knew who they were for. Afterward, people drifted into the room in careful little currents. Children recovered faster, as they usually do. One little boy made a beeline for the beanbags, as though adult collapse was simply weather. That helped. Pastor Caleb found me in the hallway outside the staff room while volunteers were stacking paper cups and gathering up napkins shaped like leaves. I should have asked better questions. You should have. He nodded once. No defensiveness, no sermon. I'm sorry. I looked at him. He looked older than he had a week before. Understanding late is still better than not understanding at all. He accepted that like a man who knew it was less forgiveness than he wanted and more than he deserved. Marilyn came by next, brisk and practical again. The board is not canceling anything. The room stays open. If donors leave, they leave. If they stay for the children. Celia appeared behind her, tired but steadier. The biggest donor hasn't decided yet. That's fine, I said. We're still here. By Sunday evening, Mason called. I let it ring twice before answering. You didn't have to do that in front of everyone. You didn't have to bring my mother into Ruth Ann's room. He went quiet for a second, then came back smaller, angrier because smaller was all he had left. So what now? Now Donna handles the paperwork. If there's something I legally need to sign regarding Briar Glen, I'll sign through her. I'm not coming to church, I'm not coming to hospice, and I'm not giving you another picture to use. There was a sound on his end like he had hit the steering wheel with the heel of his hand. You think you're so much better than us. No, I said. I think I'm done helping you lie. That ended it. The legal side moved quickly after that, which told me it had always been able to. Donna handled every document. I signed what needed to be signed and nothing more. The portion attached to my interest in the property went where it needed to go for end-of-life care and cleanup of the house. I included one note, short enough to fit on a half sheet. This is not forgiveness. It is what Ruth Ann taught me. Kindness and boundaries can live in the same sentence. Colleen died 12 days later. I found out from Nora, not Mason. Your mom passed this morning. I thought you should hear it from someone plainly. I sat with that text on the kitchen table while the kettle boiled behind me and did not answer right away. I did not go to the funeral at Covenant Hill. I did not stand in a receiving line. I did not let the town make my face the final prop in a story my mother had spent years trying to perfect. People still talked, of course. Small towns never stop talking. But after the library, they did not talk with the same certainty. That was enough. 2 weeks later, on a Thursday afternoon, I was back in the Ruth Ann Pike Children's Reading Room, reading aloud to 7 children and 1 distracted grandmother. Sunlight came through the window in long, pale bars. The apple juice box was gone, but the ring it had left on the table was still there if you looked closely. When story time ended, Tess Rowan, who was 7 and missing 1 front tooth, raised her hand even though the story was over. Miss Wren. Yeah, sweetheart? Is it true somebody found you at a train station? The room quieted, not with tension this time, just with listening. Yes, I said, and after that I was never alone again. Tess nodded like that made perfect sense, then went back to coloring a fox with a purple tail. I looked up at Ruth Ann's name over the door, and then at the place by the window where the juice box had sat, and for the first time in a long time, the past felt less like a weight and more like a line, one that began in cold gravel and ended in a room built for children who might need what I once needed: a chair, a book, a quiet adult who notices. My mother gave me my life. Ruth Ann taught me how to live it. If this story brought someone to mind, someone who chose you, stayed, noticed, fed you, believed you, tell me their name, Just the name is enough. And if you want to stay for more stories like this, you already know where to find me.